All right, back on the grain cart today. Got bearings, got seals, everything came in. Before we could start hammering this gearbox back together, though, there's one thing I got to do. So when it's in the cart, it sits in there roughly like that. If we're looking from the back, faces forward. Input shaft, output shaft, and there's no, like, you got your oil fill hole. You've got the only way to drain this thing while it's on the cart is to pull the PTO shaft and pull this front bearing carrier off, and that's the only way to get oil out. And this is one of them deals, just by the nature of it, you really, really, really want to be able to change the oil in this every year, because and the best way to mitigate this is when you park it with the auger unfolded so that your giant gaping hole is somewhat closed up. But the problem that you have is if you park this with the auger unfolded folded up, or even if you park it folded out and you let it sit out, especially if it's sitting outside, rainwater will run down the auger and end up, especially if your seals are out, inside the gearbox. My boss's old 4500 that I used a couple years ago when I was mudding out corn, that one was the same way. It'd get water in the gearbox every year, and that gearbox didn't leak oil. Just the nature of the beast, the gearboxes get water in them. So you want to be able to change that every year. This one, obviously, the seals were out. Not only was it getting oil, but it was getting ground up grain inside of it. So in order to mitigate that, what I did on his cart, what I'm going to do on this cart, is you come right here and you punch a hole and put a drain plug in it. It doesn't hurt the structural integrity of the gearbox. There's nothing here, and that lets you drain the oil out of it and be able to change it without having to disassemble the cart to do it. And then your fill hole's still good. The other problem with this thing, probably what blew the seals out to begin with, did not have a breather plug in it. So gearbox heats up, pressurizes, blows the seals out. So it's probably what set in motion of events that led this thing into turning into what it turned into to start with. So, real quick, I'm going to lay out a hole, and we'll drill and tap for a pipe plug. And then once that's in, we can start putting it back together. Alright, so I was looking at this thing, and sorry, I got carried away punching the hole and forgot to video that part, but I'm gonna get tapping it. I was looking at this thing, and it's like looking at how it mounts in the cart and everything. I was like, there's got to be a better spot to put this drain plug hole. And I was looking, it's like, well, there's this flat milled off here for a bolt pattern if it needed to mount this way, and that puts me into a nice heavy, you can't see it, nice heavy boss there in the corner. So you got a crap ton of meat right here in the corner, so you're not really doing anything structurally. It was drilled for a bolt, or it was cast that way for a bolt anyhow, so that's where a hole would have been. The downside to this location, it does break into this bolt hole, but the way this mounts on the cart, that bolt hole is unused anyhow. So clean the threads up, stuff a bolt in there with some pipe dope on it. The bolt acts as a plug. The hole's plugged. Nothing lost. And so basically this gets me a drain plug in a nice heavy part of the casting where we don't have to worry about anything breaking. The only downside, but putting it here would have had the same downside. It doesn't get it all the way to the bottom of the cavity, so you're not going to get 100% of the oil out. There's still going to be like yay much left in the bottom, but it's going to be a heck of a lot better than what was in there, which was nothing. So all in all, I like this location better. But this hole's a little too meaty to be power tapping, so I just have a center point in the chuck to keep the tap straight up and down in the hole. You use that to get it started, and then once you get some threads in, you can back off and just run the tap in like so. This thing's kind of big to be power tap in because we don't really have anything to get a hold of it. We got stuff that'll get a hold of the shank, but you'll just slip on that. You won't. All right, got the holes in. It's plugged. Guess I can take this out so you can see the finished product. I cleaned the threads out of this one so we can run a bolt in it and plug that hole. But that's what we got. So we can start putting things together. We'll start easiest and work our way to the hardest. So this bearing goes in. Like so. And then in that theme, we can put this seal in, which is this guy. And that goes in. It's really weird how they did this. The seal goes in from the inside. It's got this lip that keeps it from going, which, I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the fact that it protects it from anything damaged from here. But then it also lets crap get in between the seal and the casting. I don't know, 6 one way, half a dozen the other, I guess. Let's get a little bit bigger. There we go. Not quite. Move it in, back to the smaller ones. We can work the corners. I guess edges, circles don't have corners. Yeah, see, it leaves a little gap right there where shit can get in between the outer lip and the casting, and I don't really know how I feel about that. Seems like a good way to be able to take a seal out. Okay, so, and then we can go here. And we can put a race in this guy. That one takes that one. There's that. Now, I guess from there, we had that goes there, and then, so in order to keep them paired, we want to pull this set out, and this guy, so there's shims on here, that sets the bearing preload. There is no way to really adjust the gear lash. It's all one and the same. So you either have the correct gear load and hopefully the correct gear lash, or you don't. Anyway, so the way they came apart, there was a shim here, 2 shims here, and then on the other one there's a shim against the gear. And you had the gear. How did that work? the gear, and then this bearing was against the gear, everything in from the back, and then the taper bearing was on the outside. So yeah, we'll figure that one out when we get there. I gotta remember how the heck. Oh, it went gear, ball bearing, gap, taper bearing was pressed on, and then the shims were behind the tapered bearing. Was how that went. So, okay. But anyhow, so this is going to go on like this. And then, without dropping the shims, that whole thing goes in like that. So bearing, shim. And then we're going to put it together dry for a hot minute. Don't really have any torque values for these things. I would guess for all it is, Gudentite's probably good enough. Well, that's interesting. That's gonna need a lot more shimming. But we can't do a whole lot with that until we get this one assembled and get it in, so that we know, okay, is bearing lash or is bearing preload and gear lash going to cooperate with each other if we pull this out, or is that going to make the gears too tight and it's going to be what it's going to be? So we have to get this one put together real quick. So let's let that simmer. I've already put the new snap ring on here. We're going to pull 2 shims off. We're going to put our other ball bearing on, because that's going to go, yep, it's going to go like that. And what do we have? I have to find a piece of pipe that'll fit over that so I can drive that bearing on. Okay, bearings on, and then we put the housing on, and we will have to probably, this ain't gonna take much. I probably just tap it together in the vise because they don't fit very tight. That's home. Well, that would figure. There we go. I see a problem. How I screwed that up, I don't know. But I do see a problem. We'll show you in a minute. Make sure that's on there all the way, and then hopefully both of our shims fit, and then hopefully our, where did that go? Snap ring still fits. Well, by all rights, that could probably stand to have another shim in it. There's basically, that could stand to have a little bit more shim. But this guy, kind of missing an important piece. That's what I get for getting ahead of myself. We got this nice bearing here with no race to interact with. That'll tighten her up a bit. That'll actually tighten her up a lot. We might actually have to lose some shims, which will work out good, because if I do, we can take a shim off of here and put on there. Yep, I'm gonna bet money. Oh yeah. Yep, there ain't no way. No way. You can see I got her tight. Haven't even tightened the bolts yet, and there's still a monster gap. So there's no, that ain't happening. We're gonna have to take a shim. Probably both of these shims out of the back. Which is why we put this together dry for the time being. Let's take both of those guys off. Put that back. Put this back. Now we're looking a little bit more kosher. And I'll have to take this back apart and put, they didn't have any gaskets or anything, they just, from the factory, had it sealed with some RTV, so that's what I'll put back on it. Just a slight probably stand, there's a thicker one and a thinner one. We can probably stand to put that thinner one back in. Okay, so I took one shim out, or took both shims out. That was just slightly too loose. Put one shim back in, and now I would consider that perfect. There's just an ever so slight amount of drag, which is probably a little bit of seal drag because I put it together dry. Because we're going to be taking apart, put back together here. But there's no chunk in it, so I'm going to call that good on that bearing. And then as for this guy, we're going to pop this snap ring back out. I don't know if there's going to be enough room. Come here, you little prick. Okay, let's switch back down and start all over. Oh, come on. You're out of the groove. Why are you fighting me, you little bastard? There we go. There we go. Sort of, kind of. Okay, let's see. That one. Okay, what do we got here for thicknesses? That's going to be a bit too much. That one's basically nothing. So what if we take that one out, put this one in? What's that give me? Since I don't have any specs for this gearbox, basically I'm just going off of speculation and feel about roughly what it should be. What the heck? Okay, that's got all the, that's just about perfect. That's got all the chunk out of it. Okay, we're going to call that cool. So, let's set everything together here and see how, which the backlash, at this point to where everything's set, there's really not a whole lot I can do about it because I don't have, which I'm going to call for a fairly low speed, low use gearbox, I'm going to call that none too shabby. I think we're going to, because if I pull, if I put those two, about the only other thing I could do, we're going to call that good. Because the only other thing I could do would be to take a shim off of here, pull the stack back apart, put it on the bottom side underneath that ball bearing, and that would shove it that way, but that might be too much. I'm going to call it good. We're going to leave it. We're going to call it good, not have any sort of spec for how this is, what kind of gear lash it's supposed to have. Or do I try it? Should I try it? Nope, we're leaving it. We're leaving it. I'm calling it good. We're going to put it back, put it together like this. One shim out. So, the only thing I got to do is drive the top seal in, which I had to wait till everything was together to do that. And then RTV the mating surfaces, and we're good to go. Alright, the gearbox is happy. The chunk sounds a lot worse than it is. Get some oil in that, and it won't be nearly as bad. I got to looking. all these holes here, here, where they are cross drilled for both the mounting holes and the holes for the bearing caps. They're all cross drilled. All these holes meet each other, so that's standard operating procedure on here. But I got a bolt stuffed in that hole with pipe dope, so that's not gonna leak. That's tight. That's just in there. It's got a breather plug in it now, so the gearbox can't overpressurize. So that is ready to go. So now I guess I'll drag the auger up here and we'll start the fun part, getting that bearing off. Alright, so the way this is assembled, this drive hub has a shaft on it attached to it that goes all the way up through, I'm guessing about to here-ish, because it catches that bolt hole and that bolt hole, and those bolts are what hold it in. And then it's the same diameter as the bearing, so that it's all got to come off, get the bearing off. Unfortunately, now it's not the bolts holding it in, it's the rust, and there's a fair bit of cross section to get through to heat this up enough. So this is going to be interesting. My hopes are I can get it heated up and then beat on it like this with an air hammer and try to get it to spin, and then hopefully maybe be able to push it out, hammer it out, drag it out. I wish we had a big slide. One of these days I'm going to run across one of them big like OTC slide hammer sets that takes up like half a wall and has got the great big like 9-pound slide hammer. That's what I really like. Those are expensive and hard to find. So, but that's what I'd like to get at some point. Anyway, it had worked enough rust out that it would start taking WD-40. So I was able to get some lube in there, and then it finally... I did have to get kind of rough with it, but when it's got to come out one way or the other, so... But I'm just going to cut that damn bearing off because A, I'm not trying to save any of it, and B, I can't get the set screws out. They're ate up from corn, so that's just going to come off the hard, or the easy way, hard way, depending on whose side you look at it from. this is all ready to go back together with lots and lots and lots of anti-seize. And we'll have to, that is going to have to get set once it's in the cart. But I can put the bolts back in that, and the auger's ready to go back in. All right, there's that. The bearing will get set on the shaft once it's in. That way we're not straining it. Because the way this works, there is actually nothing that physically holds it on the gearbox shaft. It literally goes down, and the hole is blind back in there, and it just sits on the gearbox. So the gearbox takes that load, so you don't want this bearing holding up on it. So that'll get set when the time comes. Hopefully it's not a case of I have to, because I put it back together the way they had it. So hopefully it's not a case I have to take it back apart, flip it over to get it further up, because the collar's on this side. So, but that's why I'm leaving it loose. And then now that everything's loose, it won't be a bad job to just pull the bolts and yank it out and flip everything and put it back together inside the tube. But there's no way that was happening. I shouldn't say that. It could have happened on the cart, but it wouldn't have been fun. So that's ready. Gearbox is ready. Everything's ready. So tomorrow we can bring the cart down. I got to weld one piece of steel in for the grain gate, and then this can go back in, and with any luck at all, by tomorrow evening, the cart will be field ready. All right. So we're going to start putting this thing back together, but before I start putting any of the parts that we took off back on, I want to do something different here. I don't understand why they have a lip on the inside of the door down here, not on the outside, because grain pressure is going to, you know, want to push the door this way, not that way. And it's not very... I mean, it's sufficient, but it's not like there's some sort of bend in here in the bottom to reinforce it or something to keep from wanting to pucker. So it makes more sense to have this on the outside, not the inside. So I'm going to cut this out and just get rid of it, and then weld a piece in between here and here on the outside to back this up so that that door doesn't blow out. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then we can start putting parts back on. Let's do our... Apparently thicker than I thought it'd be. sure this thing still closes. Door's already got a pucker in it right there, so this was much needed. Oh, we need to be grounded, and we can't do that with the door in there right now. Dang breeze. Man, we were doing so good. All right, we're ready to put the gearbox back on. I made a new quote-unquote seal for it because this hole is a whole lot bigger than the output shaft. They had a piece of hard, and it was something it was homemade. It's not something Parker put in there. It was a piece of hard plastic with a way oversized hole in it. So I cut the hole on size so that it's a tight fit on the shaft and it'll wear to the correct size. And then I'm gonna look in the parts book and see what is supposed to be in there, and we'll see if we can get something that's more correct at a later date. But for now, we just need to get it rolling. So I'm putting new bolts in it because the old ones were all nasty and mismatched and were too short to put lock washers on, and I want lock washers. Alright. Now we can put the input shaft back on. With lots of anti-seize. And right around here. You want to know what's crazy. If that's the term you want to use. You look up the specs for this gearbox. It's only rated for 30. It was something goofy. I think like 33 horse. It wasn't an even number. But yeah, that's a little different. There ain't no way you're ever gonna pull this thing with a tractor less than 100 horse, which is kind of ironic. I might have to get help with this part. So I got to get that carrier bearing up over that cross member, and at the same time get everything. So I'm gonna have to get a hand here. All right, now it's time to set the auger back in, which is a little bit of a trick. I already got it, as you can see, started. There we go. That's what we needed. Now I need to set a block there so I can rehook it. Then we can finish setting it in. I don't even need to rehook it. Doing this very gingerly. At least up to a point. Sets on a block, but that makes it a lot easier to do this part now. Alright, I'm out of daylight and patience. Things were going really good. Took a minute to figure out I had to put the auger in, it wouldn't go down on the gearbox. Pulled it part way out, cleaned it up. It went a little bit further down on the gearbox, pulled it all the way out, cleaned it up more, set it back in, it went part way down on the gearbox. Busted the gearbox loose from the frame, and then it just slid all the way down. So I wish I probably could have got away with just loosening the gearbox the first time, but that thought didn't cross my head or cross my mind, because why should the gearbox be crooked? But apparently it was. But anyway, that auger's in. The problem arose when I went to hook the new carrier bearing up, and the new horseshoe bracket that catches the corners of the sides of the tube is too tall, and it's got the auger shoved all the way up in that corner, and I can't screw the bearing down anymore to pull it back down where it needs to be. So either, and this is going to be tomorrow project, I'm either going to have to reuse this homemade bracket, which I'd prefer to not do if I don't have to. I guess I shouldn't say that. I could clean this bracket up, make it a little nicer, which might be what I end up doing. Or modifying that bracket, which would probably be a little bit more work. I'm gonna do one of the two, but if I do this one, these holes need to be slotted up and down somehow. That hole and that hole, and then this hole for this bolt needs to be slotted because this bracket needs to be able to slide back and forth. And right now that hole, and that hole are all just round holes, so you lose half of your adjustment right off the bat. So you're gonna have to do one of the two. We'll see. I'll think on it overnight and see which route I end up going. But so we're not gonna be done tonight. Hopefully we can finish it up tomorrow. We shall see. So we'll catch you guys tomorrow. All right. So now that we're in daylight, you can see. So this bolt makes the hole. This one does not. We're like a full hole off, and it's too tall for this corner, and it shoves the entire auger up. And the auger must have a little bit of run out in it. It actually, like right there, it rubs. It doesn't rub hard. You can by hand spin it all the way around. Maybe. I was doing it yesterday. Yeah, there you go. So, but that needs to be corrected. So I think what I'm going to do is reuse this bracket. And I'm going to come in here halfway down the legs, cut them off, come back in here, bolt the feet in, and then see where that makes we'll call it the horseshoe land, and hopefully it lands in such a way where the legs will overlap part way and slide down, and I can weld them together like in a sandwich. And then this bracket's fine, and when you move it back, you just screw the bearing in or out, which right now the bearing is bottomed all the way out as far as it'll go, and I have no more, which is part of the problem. So you need to shorten this bracket down in here so that you can actually use this part of the bracket like you're supposed to, and slide this back and forth to set this way and turn this in and out to set that way. So it'll all make sense here in a minute. Okay, we'll see how this angle works. So, got my bracket chopped up, and it looks like it's going to work how I wanted it to. We'll be able to come in like that and overlap them, and then that gives me a boatload of adjustment on this bearing if I come in here and do this. So I think that's the route we're going to go. I'll probably have to get everything cleaned up and probably clamp it and tack it up here so that my bolt holes will line up right, and then we can weld it. That would really suck though. If I get it clamped up here, that would be ideal. But I'm still gonna have to take everything apart and clean it all up, so hold please. All right, a little bit of work later. You can see where I welded it together. 2 cuts, that was it. I didn't have to do anything, didn't have to bend anything, just 2 cuts. That came back in underneath the original angle, and everything fit together nice, and it catches both bolt holes. Lays in there real nice. The auger, I had to thread it out, and the bearing out looks like about 4 threads. It is right dead nut center in both directions. It goes round and round. Doesn't hit anything, doesn't rub anything. So very nice. And I also noticed something. I kept looking at this sticker and I'm like, man, that looks awful AGCO, and that value line kept it's like, man, that rings a bell. And curiosity, got the better of me, and I just looked it up, and I was correct. just like I thought. In the basically from the inception in 1991 up until I think the early 2000s, I think they've killed it since as a product line. But if you went into a dealer and like the radios and the hitch pins and the cylinders and all of the shelf stocking stuff, AGCO sold that under the Value Line name. So this is actually, it's not an AGCO didn't build the cylinder. They bought the cylinder from apparently a Canadian manufacturer and had them put their sticker on it. But that's why the black orange, that's why that sticker looks kind of AGCO-y, is because that is an AGCO cylinder, so to speak. So there's your neat little tidbit of information for the day. So now that the auger is buttoned up, I have to tighten the gearbox real quick because I loosened that. Dump or put oil in it, and then we gotta untangle this mess, redo the hoses real quick, and she's good to go in theory. Oh, probably shoot some grease in it while it's sitting here too. All right, I got this mess all sorted or untangled. The light harness and everything was all wrapped up in the hoses, which the light harness has seen better days, but all the lights are busted on it anyhow. Well, the back one's got bulbs in them, but the lenses are broke out, and I think the housings are messed up. Must use it for a battering ram. But anyhow, I have no clue why the heck they got these like 24-inch, because I mean these things make these hoses obnoxiously long. If you come back here to the original length of the original 1/4-inch hoses, like, your remotes are going to be like, right, that's plenty of slack. So they must have needed more hose, I guess. So we're only going to make the 1/4-inch hose part. We're not going to worry about any of that. We'll just steal the couplings off of them because those are the important part. So clean them up. Do I have the right wrenches? Probably not, but I was shooting in the dark. Well, that wrench is right. Nope, that wrench is wrong. It's close. 9/16. Alright, I need 3 hoses 100 inches long. Or, sorry, 4 hoses 100 inches long. There we go. All right, hoses are all replaced, and I got them tied together in pairs as to what goes to what. It's greased. Everything should be done that I need to do to it, and I think we got just enough daylight left. If I hurry, we can get it home, get it back, or get it behind the 19 and unfold it and check and make sure everything's good to go. So, because I don't have anything here. Everything that we have that's 1000 PTO is at my house in the barn now, so can't do anything here with it. So let me hurry up, get things hooked up, put away, whatever I got to do, and then we'll get on with it. All right, I got everything hooked up. I'll have to get some zip ties, mark my hoses so I know which ones are tops, but I already got everything in the correct order, so I know we're working. But the auger out. And it is. And the way this works, that outer carrier bearing is on a set of springs. So if it doesn't hit a hole or a notch in that drive hub, it'll shove the auger up till you kick it in. And when that bottom auger starts spinning, it'll fall into a notch, and the springs will push the auger. Well, between the springs and the weight, will push the auger down to engage. Slam when it fell down and engaged. So we're augering corn. I don't hear it scuffing. That actually runs really freaking quiet for an auger. And the gearbox is probably going to dribble out of the breather. I did make the whole face up. I should probably make it face sideways, that way water can't get in it, but that's about 1200. That's probably your augering speed, roughly. Obviously, you're never going to run it wide open unloading. I like it. To a stop, which is a pretty good indicator there's nothing binding. And that little dial there needs adjusted, but now our door should be shut, and it is. Mint. We're ready to parts and grain, boys and girls. So now between getting it hauled home, buying it, getting it hauled home, and then the money I just had to put into it, which so I'm at $3,500 for a running working cart that's got brand new upper and lower augers in it. So basically I just did the last of whatever you can do to quote-unquote rebuild a grain cart. So the only other thing I'll have to do, the only reason I haven't done it, I haven't been anywhere to get it. I'll have to get some like weather stripping foam, something or other, to make a new seal around the auger so it doesn't leak. But that's no big deal. So anyhow, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps that project up. So I'll have to check the air and the tires. I forgot to do that because he only put enough air back in to make them round, so I need to make them hard so that we don't roll a rim or roll a tire off a rim. But other than that, it's greased, everything's ready to rock and roll. So got oil in the gearbox. So, sweet. Well, that being said, that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.